Hello pirates. This video is about the King's Writ, which is the third piece in building a good conqueror fleet using some of the modern hulls we have available. If you check my channel, I've already did a video on building sloths, including the bus, its flagship. There's another video about building twin blades. If you don't have the latest technology, there's a video about inquisitors. And with this piece here, I'm doing the last in the sequence, the King's Writ. So this is the latest and most powerful leading conqueror hull you can find in the game. Before we go down to build details, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how it works. It is optimized for concussive weapons. That means depth charges, as it cannot have torpedoes. It's only standard and countermeasures. It's also part of KIXEYE's latest initiative to simplify the game for players. So if you look at all the stats here, it's actually very simple and straightforward. There are no auras, no complex effects. It's all very much easy to read. So you can see it has a lot of base armor, 175,000 armor. It has built-in bonuses for anti-mortars, and that's one of the things that makes this one a very good spotter in base attacks. The fact that it can counter mortars that eventually could hit your back line, your sloths and the other ships. It also has a massive concussive damage of plus 225% of the weapon's base damage. Okay, it also doubles projectile speed, so things hit really fast. That's good both for the countermeasures and for the offensive weapons. Defense-wise, it has defenses against all 6 types of damage. I'm not sure you can actually set up any cannons to hurt it with 110,000 ballistic deflection. No hyena setup can hurt it either with 400,000 penetrative deflection. Explosive deflection, it is one of the King's Writ weaknesses. I mean, you may look at 110,000 explosive deflection as a lot, but if you have your cat mortars or your epic cat mortar turret set up right, with the right amount of fire support and few ammunitions, you can actually hurt the King's Writ with mortars. But it takes the right setup. So people who just put a bunch of turrets in there and hope for the best will not do well. If you surround them with the right number, and by right number I mean as many as possible, you know, tactical modules, the cat mortars can actually hurt this ship. Okay, corrosive deflection makes it pretty immune to corrosive damage as well. Concussive is the other obvious weakness here. With just 18,000 concussive deflection, it can't be hurt by the Omega weapon on the outpost. It can also be hurt by the right setup of torpedoes or depth charges. So, and that's why people normally pair it up with sloths, because then each sloth will add about 5,000 and something deflection to it. And the Brennus Unstoppable Sloth, the flagship, adds 11,000. So if you have the King's Writ with 2 regular sloths and the bus in the same fleet, you're adding 20,000 to that number, and now it's 38,000, close to 40,000 actually. Then it becomes really hard to kill it with concussive weapons. Not impossible, but very hard. And radioactive is also not one of the weaknesses. So pretty much you gotta find smart ways of killing it with explosive damage and concussive damage primarily. It isn't reactive, so it will not build up to a shockwave or anything like that. And has very good splash damage reduction, so things that just do splash damage will have a harder time killing it unless it's not moving. So portals and that new trap that slows things down, very important. Has good combat speed, bad turn speed, but with rank and the right special speed system 6 for instance, it will get a lot better. And it can detect subs at range of 85, so you know, if you're facing gluttonies that can fire from a range of 100, still going to be blind. But you hardly walk into subs, you know, like they can still see, you can still see them with the King's Writ. Very low repair time, very low build time. So that's the whole overview. Let's talk a bit about the weapon now. Okay, so the Excalibur Gatling gun. When you look at its damage, it's 11,000 divided by 5 salvo, so it's just over 2,000 damage per pellet. Okay, but the thing is, as soon as you put it on the King's Writ, because of the plus 225%, it already goes to 35,000 damage divided by 5. Each pellet now is doing 7,000. Okay? Now you put the right specials and these numbers become very impressive. The first special we are going to add here is the one that came with the King's Writ, the vulcanized barrels. It's an interesting special, so it gives you a 10% chance of a critical hit doing extra 150%. So like I said, each pellet has about just over 7,000 damage, and 1 in 10 will actually be doing about 18,000 damage. Okay, which is already enough to kind of like match the natural deflection, concussive deflection of the Writ itself. So if you had a battle of Writ versus Writ, one of these critical hits would already damage or match the deflection. There's also a 10% chance it will have extra 40% splash, and these two bonuses are disconnected. So you can now have a regular pellet doing the normal 7,000 damage, with the normal 10 splash, okay? You can have some hits with extra 40% splash but the normal damage, and then you can have some extra damage on a hit without the splash, and sometimes both will combine. Okay, so that's how this special works. The next special we should look into is what else can we use to buff damage here, right? So one option is the advanced concussive payload. This one will give you 50% extra damage and 30% reload. Torpedo tubes is only good for torpedoes. That's not the case here, so we're not using this special. The PBX payload is not for Conquerors and can be combined with the vulcanized barrels. Okay. So that leaves us with an older special, if you remember, Strike Warheads. This one is the best buff to concussive damage, so you could consider this special, and you see the damage now jumped from 35 to 42, nearly 42,000. Then on top of that you can have, so you divide that by 5, you're having just over 8,000 per damage per pellet, and then you know you can have the 150% critical chance. It's either that, and if you care about a faster reload, because the reload time starts at 10 and then goes down in increments, gets 250% faster, you could go with the ACP, this one here. Okay, I'm gonna stick with Strike Warheads. Now we gotta look into movement. So Speed System 6 I would say is the best call, because it's also going to solve the problem with low turning speed, so that's much better. If you look at the defense block, there is no stun or slow resistance, meaning by nature the King's Writ will not do well against things such as the glacial turret or anything else that slows it down. So if you want that effect to fade quickly and you want to add some evade, agility system would be a very good choice. Okay, so these are two defensive specials. Of course, this is a Conqueror hull we're going to use for hitting bases. So the next one we need is Siege Battery, 3 or 4. If you want to maximize building damage, you go with Siege Battery 4. Okay, and now there's so many choices for the last special. I can't really tell you which one's the best one. You can go for something that buffs splash on the weapon and spread. So anything that buffs spread and splash, such as Combustion System 2, right here, that's a choice. It's valid. You know, you wanted to have some sonar, I wouldn't, but you could use sonic targeting. I wouldn't do that. If you want to maximize building damage, absolutely you could use siege targeting 4. That's a very good choice. It gives you very solid building damage. Okay, to rip through portals, for instance, if you're spotting and you don't want to get stuck in there, that's a very good choice. And again, I'm talking about a hole here to do damage. That's not the countermeasure version of it, because then we're going to have to change some of these specials if that's the case. Okay, another one, if you're looking for projectile speed and building damage, you can do the AFT razor foils. Forget about the penetrative accuracy. What you care about here is building damage and projectile speed. So that's another very good choice. It gets you good building damage, not as much wall damage, but the projectile speed, which is already fast here, 500. Okay, just goes up by 200, so you're gonna have pretty much a 1500 projectile speed. Okay, it's gonna hurt like a bullet. So yeah, I mean, these would be some of my top choices for specials. There's not much else here that can buff concussive damage. Okay, so another option, if you don't want to use agility system, you see I removed agility system from here. You could do it separately. If you want a more defensive setup, you just use regular good old guidance scrambler 3 for evade. And then in the other slot, you can go and use shield tactical system 3. This one is particularly good if you're gonna go up against the new Scourge trap in the portals that slows you down. This will reduce the slow effect, okay, giving you a tactical field resistance of 47%. So, and now I'm kind of starting to flip over to a more defensive setup. So let me go back to what I had before. Okay, AFT, guidance scrambler 4, agility system 4, and picking out the weapons here. So let's just load it up. If you're making an offensive setup, so you can go really heavy on the weapons, and here you go, 11 days fully loaded except for the armor. As for armor, if you're not gonna have a bunch of sloths in the fleet, it is very vulnerable to the concussive damage from the Omega gun on top of the outpost, so you should definitely look into the new concussive plate. If you didn't get it from Bounty, really there's nothing else you can do here other than put some evade or splash damage reduction and move real fast. But if not, your best bet would be to try and make it a little bit stronger with concussive plate. I don't know how many. Oh, there's only room for one, unless we remove a weapon here for some lightweight countermeasures, for instance. Okay, so that frees up space for more armor. There you go. Okay, even then, it's not as effective as having sloths in the fleet. You're up to 26,000. It's gonna make you last longer against the Omega weapon, but doesn't make you immune to that. So use that combat speed to just keep moving, keep trashing stuff. Okay, and overall this would be my recommended setup. Either this or the other setup's a lot heavier, so you're gonna have to take away some weapons. You can go with extra building damage. Like I said, much heavier setup. That's why I'm going AFT razor foils, because primarily the building damage is there. Okay, but that's the other option with one less weapon. Okay, so I hope that helps if you're going to make an attacker version of the King's Writ. That's it.